2021 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Bauk, could you please take the roll?
Commissioner Alsteiger is absent. Commissioner Asman?
Here.
Commissioner Eke? Here. Commissioner Ronan is absent. Commissioner Bush? Here. Vice Mayor Simon is absent. Mayor Perschbacher?
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, we have a quorum, so we will continue this meeting. First on the agenda is the introduction and swearing in of new city police officers. Director Loya, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to introduce David Wheaton, who recently joined the police ranks on June 6th. David served as a combat engineer in the United States Marine Corps before working for the Saginaw Police Department. He recently earned his associate's degree from Delta Community College and is currently completing our police department's field training program. David, turn and face me. If you could raise your right hand, please, and repeat after me. I, David Wheaton, do solemnly swear.
I, David Wheaton, do solemnly swear.
That I'll support, defend, and uphold.
I support and defend and uphold.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The laws of the state of Michigan.
The laws of the state of Michigan.
And the ordinances of the city of Mount Pleasant.
And the ordinances of the city of Mount Pleasant.
To the best of my abilities.
To the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, David. You are now a certified police officer for the city of Mount Pleasant. If you have any comments, go ahead.
I'd just like to thank everyone from the director to Lieutenant Bliss and my current field training officer and anyone that's made it possible for me to be working here in the city of Mount Pleasant. Thank you.
Well, congratulations and welcome, Officer Wheaton. All right, at this time we have two proclamations today. I will be presenting them at the podium. The first is to recognize Juneteenth Celebration Day, which is June 19th, 2022 officially. And a celebration will be open to the public this Friday at Central Michigan University from 1 to 3 at Warner Mall. The second is to recognize the LGBTQ Pride Month, which is celebrated in June. This first proclamation will be received by James Spann, Jr. Whereas Juneteenth, or Juneteenth Independence Day, commemorates the traditional observance of the end of slavery in the United States and is observed annually on June 19th. And whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passing of the 13th Amendment, for which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas more than 2 years would pass before the news reached Texas, when on June 19th, 1865, Union Major General Gordon Granger and his regiment arrived in Galveston and spread the word that slavery had been abolished. And whereas the following year, the first official Juneteenth celebrations took place in Texas and have continued across the United States throughout the years. And whereas June 19th has a special meaning and called Juneteenth, combining the words June and 19th, and have been celebrated by the African American community for over 150 years. And whereas the city of Mount Pleasant supports our nation's Declaration of Independence, which provides that all men are created equal and acknowledges that we should celebrate and enjoy liberty and justice for every citizen. Now therefore, I, Amy Perschbacher, Mayor of the City of Mount Pleasant, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2022 as Juneteenth Celebration Day in Mount Pleasant, and furthermore, resolve to support the education and informational outreach by Central Michigan University on June 17th to involve our larger community in this celebration. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and great seal of the city of Mount Pleasant this 13th day of June, 2022.
It's gonna be fun.
Yes. Yep. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I suggest anybody that is available this Friday to head down to Central Michigan University for the Juneteenth celebration. It's going to have some great activities and some great participation from all areas of our community. Our next proclamation is for Pride Month. Scott Ellis, Executive Director of Great Lakes Bay Pride, is here to receive this. Whereas in the movement towards equal rights for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender LGBTQ+ people, a historic turning point occurred on June 28, 1969 in New York City with an onset of the Stonewall riots. During these riots, LGBTQ+ citizens rose and fought against the discriminatory criminal laws that have since been declared unconstitutional. And whereas LGBTQ+ pride celebrations have taken place around the country every June to commemorate the beginning of the Stonewall riots. And whereas June is celebrated as LGBTQ+ Pride Month nationwide. And whereas Great Lakes Bay Pride, a local LGBT+Q+ nonprofit, is celebrating its 20th anniversary in 2022. And whereas Great Lakes Bay Pride works to connect the LGBTQ+ and ally community to resources, education, networking, opportunities, and advocates for LGBTQ+ rights in the Great Lakes Bay region and beyond. And whereas our nation was founded on the principle of equal rights for all people, but the fulfillment of this promise has been long in coming for many Americans. And whereas recognizing the contributions made by members of the LGBTQ+ community and actively promote the principles of equality, liberty, and justice. Now therefore, I, Amy Perschbacher, Mayor of the City of Mount Pleasant, do hereby proclaim June 2022 as LGBTQ+ Pride Month in Mount Pleasant and urge residents to celebrate Great Lakes Bay's Pride's 20th anniversary with our members of the LGBTQ+ community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and the great seal of the City of Mount Pleasant, Michigan, this 13th day of June, 2022. All right, at this time in the agenda, we have a presentation by Jim McBride of Middle Michigan Development Corporation on the annual Industrial Facilities Tax Abatement Report. Mr. McBride, I give you the floor.
One slide for you, is that correct? Yes. Thank you, Mayor Perschbacher and members. Before I get into this report, if you don't mind, I had a couple other handouts I'd like to quickly go through. The first one is our 2021 annual report, which you should have a copy of. And if you, okay, yeah, looks like you do. And then what I want to also point out is we split out for the city of Mount Pleasant on this particular sheet that I'm holding up, the breakdown that will reflect here in a moment when I get to page 3 within the annual report. So if you'll turn there with me to page 3, local impact, you can see that we had 184 company visits grand total last year, despite COVID and all of the headwinds that we had to face in terms of calling on companies. And but then you could take a look at that extra sheet that I gave you. 93 of those were in the city of Mount Pleasant, representing 51% of the total calls we did for 2 counties. Our current service area is all of Isabella and all of Clare County. So 51%, slightly more than half of the calls we made were in the city. New job hires, once again, 624 were reported by the companies that we called on last year. That breaks down to 327 in the city and 52% of the total. New company investments, now this is a little bit lower because this varies year to year. So that was a grand total of 40,132,000. And then in Mount Pleasant, that was about 10% was in the city with businesses within the city. But that, again, is going to ebb and flow year to year. Company assist, this would be a situation where if we are calling on a company, part of the 184 visits, and a business tells us they need help with the DEQ, or they need assistance with job training, or they need assistance with pursuing grant money, you know, we would count each of those as separate assists. That's why that number is a little bit bigger than the company calls. Again, though, 223 of those were businesses within the city, totaling 55% of our efforts last year. If you look a little further down on that page, you can see some of the advocacy things that I got involved with this last year. There's a picture, Governor Whitmer there down on the bottom. We all had masks on, of course, at the time, but that was the SOAR legislation that I was asked to help get that passed in the legislature. And we've worked with the MEDC and with the governor's office to get critical economic development legislation through. We're like kind of the go-to rural group that they will often turn to. So we were able to get that through. And as you all know, General Motors, as a result, agreed to invest $7 billion in the state and double down, triple down, quadruple down on Michigan for electric vehicle future. So that was really great. I'm going to let you, because I really want to talk about the IFT, but you can go through the rest of this report at your leisure. But I just really wanted to call out some of the specific Mount Pleasant things. The other thing I'll mention, back on that same sheet, vast majority of the Match on Main grants that we had last year, because I think we had a grand total of 6, as I recall, and 4 of them were in the city. So you had Pleasant City Coffee, Mountain Town Station, Ginkgo Tree, and Blue Gator all received $25,000 grants working with us to secure those funds for expansions of their business, new amenities, new things that they added. Survival grants, again, we had a tremendous, that was early in the year, but many businesses were helped and assisted with those survival grants that we administered in this particular case, 6 counties. And then also the business development grant that went to Mac LTT, company out of Kent, Ohio. And as we all know, the DACO decided to move all of their operations from United States and Canada down to Mexico, we were one of the recipients of that, creating a vacant building in the South Industrial Park. But we were able to secure Mac LTT to move their operations for stainless steel tanks into the DACO building, and they're in there now. So we really never had a point at which that building has gone unoccupied. So we went right from one company moving out to another company moving in. And the state generously gave a $350,000 business development grant, and you folks approved that tax abatement, which was so critical as well. So thank you for that. So on the IFT report, and you should have a cover letter from me And then also the breakdown on this particular sheet. This list is getting a little shorter each year because we have some of the past tax abatements fall off after they expire, but we still have live abatements for obviously American Mitsuba, Q-Sage, Daco Products. Now I'll get to that in a moment, and J&J Land. And so, and what the promises originally made by these companies was to either retain jobs, create new jobs, and also investment. And all of these companies did do what they said they were going to do, including Daco. Daco actually did hire the people that they said they would hire, and they maintained those. And of course, they've moved, but that basically nullifies the remainder of that abatement. And of course, the city commission took action to do that, and which was the right and proper thing to do since they moved out. And so I still would say, even though that was not a good result, they still, while they were here, were abiding by the terms of that abatement. And that's what you're looking for. You want a company that you give an abatement to abide by those. And this is the only time that that's really happened. All these other abatements, these companies are all still here and growing and so on. And the Daco thing was a result of that company making a global decision to move all operations to Mexico, which we really didn't have control over. But the good news, again, Mac LTT is in that building, so we didn't lose anything. And actually, I think they're going to employ more people long-term than Daco ever did. So that's what I would say about that. So basically, just wanted to present all of this to you today and see if there's any questions that I could answer.
Does the commission have any questions? Yeah, I'd like to say, Jim, that I really appreciate the efforts that you put into our county and into our city to bring in viable businesses and jobs for us. It's very important that our residents, whether they are within the city limits or in out county, are able to have reasonable jobs with reasonable pay, be able to care for themselves and their families, and move up the ladder in, at being able to get themselves feeling like they belong and feeling like they're valued. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to return the favor because I appreciate the leadership you provided. I think you've been a tremendous breath of fresh air, and you've been very supportive, and we appreciate that because we know when companies come in to the area and they see division, and they see a lot of angst and a lot of backbiting and fighting at the local level, that's not always the best message. And you've been stalwart, and the commission has, in terms of really being strong in that area and providing a united front. And it helps more than you could possibly believe. It just helps us. And I appreciate, Aaron as the new city manager. We really love having you on the board. And I just think, we've got this opportunity now to just have this really big united message to promote this area. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions?
Oh, one last thing.
Yes.
So we do have our annual meeting coming up a week from tomorrow on the 21st. Anybody that has had a chance to see and hear Quentin Messer, he's the president and CEO of the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, the statewide. He is great. He's a tremendously inspirational speaker. So we'd love to have you there. Join us at the Marriott Courtyard, and there's a QR code on the back. So, and let me know. We'd love to have you there. Thank you.
I have already bought my ticket.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next presentation is for the 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Peter Hefner, and I represent Vreideveld Hefner, the firm of independent certified public accountants that conducted the audit for the city for the year ended December 31st, 2021. And I wanted to point out, and I typically say this with you and only one other client when I say it's quite an accomplishment that your staff puts together a report. It's about 200 pages long. They prepare the financial statements, the notes, the management's discussion and analysis, statistical section, letter of transmittal, and it takes a lot of technical expertise to do such a thing. Typically, we're auditing financial statements that aren't annual comprehensive financial report, but just financial statements, which would exclude that statistical section and the letter of transmittal and some of the other information in the very front of the document. So quite an accomplishment of your treasurer finance staff. And with that being said, I just wanted to touch upon our opinion. And we have sat down before the audit process began with your audit committee. Following the audit being completed, we went through the financial statements with your audit committee and provided them with an opportunity for questions. So I'm going to keep this at a high level, but I'm more than happy to try and address any questions you may have. Our opinion is that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations, cash flows where applicable of the governmental activities, the business type activities, the discretely presented or the aggregate discretely presented component units, each major fund, as well as the aggregate remaining funds in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that's what I would refer to as a clean opinion. The opinion's actually 2 pages long, so I don't want to read that to you, but a summary. So in the front of the audit report is the letter of transmittal followed by our opinions, the management's discussion and analysis, and then we get to the basic financial statements. So I have some slides that just present some summary data about the financial position. Where did the dollars come from and where did the dollars go to? Okay. This is a look at the basic financial statements, the statement of activity. So the first financial statement that we have is a statement of net position, followed by a statement of activity. And this is aggregate data consolidating your governmental funds and your business type activities together. So this is a very high level, and it is actually on the full accrual basis of accounting. Throughout the year, typically you're operating on the modified accrual basis of accounting, where you're really accounting for dollars coming in and dollars going out. This full accrual perspective is the perspective of a business. Just shows where did the dollars come from in the current year for your governmental activities. I personally like to see higher levels for property taxes because it's really at your control. Grants, if you are surviving on grants, that is a little more speculative because you're at the will of the grantor. So a pretty diverse scattering of where do those dollars come from. 40% property tax, revenue sharing 17%, grants 20%. So this is for your general fund, major street, local street, the governmental funds, all consolidated together. The next picture that I have, this is where those dollars went to. And again, these are just your governmental activities. So what this is showing is to what extent are charges for services, operating grants, and capital grants supporting your general government operations, your public safety operations, public works, highways. Very consolidated perspective. I would point out that the highways or streets and bridges, that's Act 51 funding that's offsetting those costs. So from year to year, we see the blue will be higher than the orange, and then the orange will be higher depending on what projects are in place. Now, the differential between the top of the blue and the orange or the yellow that we see here, that differential is being picked up by unrestricted revenues such as property taxes, state shared revenue, interest income, dollars that aren't legally restricted for a specific purpose. And a very typical picture here where the largest expense is public safety across the cities that we work with. This is a picture of the bottom line of your statement of net assets. We have your governmental activities, and what we see in the blue line are your capital assets. So that's when you buy a fire truck, a building, and the depreciation on that item pushes that blue line down year to year, so you're holding steady. On the green line, we show restricted dollars, and that's typically Act 51 dollars, fuel taxes that are legally restricted for a specific purpose, or any special revenue dollars that you have. And the last line, unrestricted net assets, and you can see you were actually in a negative, approaching back to positive. That negative was the result of new accounting standards, or newer, that was related to your pension plan, your other post-employment benefit plan. Historically, if you made the required contribution, no liability was recorded on your books. When we see that red line dive, that's when the Accounting Standards Board, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, required that you record a liability to the extent that a plan is underfunded, and there's some other technical accounting items associated with that, but currently approaching zero and positive, which is great. The next picture that I have is not looking at that full accrual perspective or big picture, but just looking at the individual funds. We have your general fund here. Here is where the dollars are coming from. Taxes, again, a year of growth. State revenue, a year of growth. You can see license and permits, pretty flat line, and charges for services, kind of up and down over time. But picture your general fund dollars coming in, general fund dollars going out. So here are where those dollars are being expended, referred to as expenditures because it's a modified accrual basis of accounting. See, we have your general government activities, your public safety activities, and then the transfers. You can see spikes when projects occur in another fund and you're moving dollars over to those other operations. But just a picture of your general fund and your bottom line of your general fund. So here is the general fund unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditures and transfers out, a sound financial position, 35% coverage. This is a picture of your general fund unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of expenditures and transfers compared across a myriad of cities that we work with. And you can see we have City 19. They have a very substantial fund balance. But if we take a look at City of Mount Pleasant, fourth item in, I'd say probably in the top quartile of that population. And these are cities that we audit in Michigan. The next picture that we have your net position of your business type activities. So this is water, sewer, and those other self-supporting operations. And your investment in capital, you can see holding steady, a little increase in the current year. Each year it's being forced down by depreciation. So each year, if you don't invest in capital to the extent of depreciation, you'll see that decline, but for the most part, holding steady. And when there's big road projects, you're putting new pipes in the ground, you can see this increase. We see your unrestricted balance increased and your restricted balance is decreasing. And that's typically bond covenants that say you have to put some dollars aside for payments of debt service or other restrictions on the bottom line. That's a real summarized perspective of your financial statements. So in the front, we have your full accrual statements, statement of net positions, and statement of activities. Then we have your governmental fund, individual statements for the majors. Then we have your fiduciary or your enterprise fund. Each column is presenting a major fund. And then we have these columns within the governmental funds that say all other, or in the enterprise funds that say all other. That's the non-major funds. So we provide an opinion on the full accrual statements, the fund financial statements for each major fund and the aggregate remaining funds, as well as your component units. And that's the front of the report. The back of the report has the notes and detailed schedules, budget and actual, things of that nature. Are there questions I can answer about the statements or the presentation or the process? Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Eke.
Okay, for somebody who doesn't understand finances, I'm just going to ask basic question. How safe are we, long-term, short-term?
How safe are you short term?
Yeah, how stable, how,
I would look back at this picture. I think it provides a pretty good perspective that you have revenues that are growing, and your primary revenue source in the general fund, which are your general operations, are property taxes. So that indicates to me that you have an increasing revenue stream to hopefully keep up with inflation. And this picture for your general fund shows me that you've set some dollars aside so you can do projects into the future. So that would say that you have 35% of a year's operation available in the general fund. So I would say that's a sound financial position.
okay,
When we take a look at your business type activities, that's water, sewer. And I should have probably lined out each of the bigger enterprise funds. But we can see here, you have unrestricted net position. It doesn't necessarily mean cash, but it does mean liquidity. And so again, a fairly sound financial position for your business type activities.
okay.
So I think this probably shows from a general fund perspective that you're in probably the top quarter of cities that we work with as far as having a cushion.
Okay, that's what I needed to hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
In other words, our staff does a great job.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Thank
I want
you.
to thank them.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right,
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity to work with you and your staff, and quite a straightforward, clean audit process from our perspective. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
I move.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Ake and a second by Commissioner Bush. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, at this time, we are going to open the floor for public comment on agenda items. Have we received any emails for public comment?
No, we have not.
All right. If you wish to make a comment, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and before you make your comment. If you're joining the meeting by Zoom, please use the raised hand feature or *9 if you're joining Zoom by phone. Once you're recognized, you'll be moved into the meeting so you could be heard and make your comment. Please state your name and address before the comment. Is there anyone in the land of Zoom wishing to make a comment?
No raised hands.
Okay. I don't think I really see anybody out here. That looks like they're running to the podium. So at this time, I will close the public comment. Manager DeSense, can you please review the receipt of petitions and communications?
Yes, Mayor. Receipt of petitions and communications includes City Manager report on pending items, monthly report on police-related citizen complaints received, minutes of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority Economic Development Corporation from April, minutes of the Traffic Control Committee, May, minutes of the Planning Commission, May, receipt of the 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, receipt of the 2021 Component Unit Financial Reports.
All right, thank you. For the consent calendar, are there any items the commission would like to remove? All right, Manager DeSense, please review the consent calendar for us.
Consent calendar includes approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held May 23rd, 2022. Consider approval of the proposed 2023-2028 capital improvement plan. Consider award of contract to Revise for website redesign for $79,100. Consider resolution in support of recommended fees associated with the airport courtesy vehicle. Receive an ordinance to amend section 154.410.b.4 and table 154.410.a of the Mount Pleasant Code of Ordinances regarding child care centers and group daycare homes and set a public hearing for July 11, 2022 on the same. Consider approval of payrolls and warrants.
All right, is there a motion to accept the consent calendar?
I move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Eke and a second by Commissioner Bush. All those in favor, say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries. We do not have any public hearings tonight, so we're going to move on to new business. Item 18 of the agenda is on the restricted covenants associated with city property. Manager DeSense, please give us an overview.
Absolutely. So I'm going to just go ahead and tee up the conversation, and then I'm going to hand it off to the city attorney, Mike Cormier, for some discussion on his end regarding the proposed restrictive covenants. But essentially, the former Roosevelt Refinery is located at 600 West Pickard in Mount Pleasant. It used to be a crude oil refinery that operated from 1930 until 1971 until it was decommissioned. The site is host to a number of contaminants from the previous operation of the refinery. To date, the contamination remains at the site, though it is unlikely that contamination will migrate due to some of the mitigation put in place by the site operators, MRP. The city owns 305 West Pickard near the site, which has been subject to residual impacts from the initial contamination. The city owns and operates a lift station at this address. We also own and operate underground utilities in the area as well. Reconstruction of these utilities and the nearby street could be impacted by contamination. MRP is requesting approval from the city for restrictive covenants at 305 West Pickard. Today with us is City Attorney Mike Cormier to discuss the proposal from MRP.
Hello, good seeing you again. I hope you can hear me.
I think you're going to have to come to the microphone. And it is good to see you again, Mike.
Thank you. Good to be here. So, MRP, which is also Valero Companies, which is big oil companies, right? They had this oil refinery, and they're working on a closeout plan. They've been working on that closeout plan for some time now. In fact, even when Manager Ridley was here, we had met several times over the course of what seems to be quite a number of months or even a year or two, talking about the restrictive covenants. And so what you should have in front of you is this non-binding term sheet about those restrictive covenants. The biggest issue for the city is, of course, what happens if you experience or run into contamination in the future when and if you have to replace those utilities. And so we've worked out this agreement. The only sticking point really is a financial assurance versus a bond. But because of the very long nature of the agreement, 40 years, it's difficult to maintain bonds over that period of time. While you could do it, it would require some administrative function on the city to ensure that bonds were available. Notwithstanding, that's the biggest risk you have here, right? Because if you talk to the company will say, oh, you know, we've been in business for a long time. If we go bankrupt, we have bigger problems. And my position is never say never, because I don't know what's going to happen over the next 40 years. So it's really contingent upon two things. One is the replacement of those utilities in that area. And two would be whether or not you encounter contamination, which, at least by all of the data that I've seen, appears unlikely. So because the contamination is deeper than what the utilities are at. And so what they've agreed to do is pay any differential cost if you do experience some contamination. And they've agreed to do that for the next 40 years. So when and if you replace those utilities and if you experienced contamination in that area, they would pay the incremental cost of that, of removing or abating or remediating that contamination. Any questions?
So basically, they are saying that if we have to redo that section of road, and there are contaminants there when we're doing that, they will come in and pay for the cleanup of those contaminants?
For those replacements of those utilities, that's right.
Okay, for the
But those
replacement of the utilities.
Those utilities, and Jason probably knows as much as I do, those utilities appear to be above the contamination level so that in the normal course of things, you shouldn't experience that contamination. But contamination sometimes moves around, and so I don't know what's going to happen in the next 40 years, which is why we have the restricted covenants are necessary for them to get their closeout plan. What the city is saying is that we'll sign off on the restrictive covenants for that area, and in exchange, they will pay the cost of differential should we encounter contamination when and if we replace those utilities, which I don't think we expect for a very long time, but sometime during the next 40 years.
Okay. Are there any questions?
What if the contamination migrates to another location?
Well, I suspect a couple different things. One is they put in slurry walls to halt the contamination. They've had that in place for a while now, and I think at least Eagle is satisfied that that's a mitigation strategy which will not allow it to migrate. That said, if it does, I suspect Eagle would still hold them accountable as the primary contributor to that contamination. So they still have ongoing mitigation responsibilities.
What is the possibility of somebody 20 years from now saying, well, but the utilities are way above where we expected the contamination to be. It's not our responsibility anymore. You
mean if they migrate to where the utilities are at?
Yeah, because we don't know. I mean, water level shifts and a whole range of things can happen environmentally, and somebody then says, yeah, but when we looked at this, it wasn't here. Now, that's not our responsibility.
Under this term sheet, in exchange for signing off on the restrictive covenants, it then is their responsibility for the next 40 years.
Okay.
So they will pay the difference in cost if you encounter that. And we did a cost estimate, I think it was roughly $900,000 on what it would take. Now, they claim, right or wrong, that is wildly conservative, that it would never be that amount anyways. But they've agreed to it on that basis. So, and those were our numbers, not their numbers. Their numbers were different.
And if the difference comes in above 900,000, I read that. Right now, gasoline is about $5 and God knows how many cents. Nobody expected it to be this high. So the difference comes in 20 years from now above that amount. Then who is responsible for that?
So the term sheet actually increases with the rate of inflation over time.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be an issue. Like I said, these were the initial numbers were put together by us and given to them. They've agreed to it and said, okay, it's up to 900,000, and that amount increases with the rate of inflation over time.
All right.
Any other questions?
40 years just doesn't seem like very long, but considering how long it's already been there, but.
Yeah. But Eagle is monitoring it.
Right.
And they will continue to monitor?
Yeah. And the company, 40 years may not seem that long, but the company wanted 20. And so we've actually doubled it. So it is in terms of the agreement, it's a very long period of time. So.
Good idea, because I know places where people have 100-year leases. Okay, so 40 years, yeah.
But we're likely to invest in utility improvement within the next 40 years and possibly discover if there is an issue.
That's why we
exactly.
moved that period.
Yeah. So that's.
That makes sense. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have a motion?
I move to accept.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Eke and a second by Bush. Is there any further discussion on this item? Manager DeSenza.
If I may, for a point of clarification, are we accepting the proposal from MRP based on their financial surety test, or did we want to accept it based on the provision of the 40-year assurance bond, which the assurance bond is the recommendation from staff, as we feel that this gives us a better sense of security going into the future versus their assurance test. If so, I would just ask that maybe we clarify the motion to essentially allow the city attorney to go back to MRP and to let them know that we would approve this deal if it were a bond instead of the financial assurance test.
That's a good question. Actually, we didn't discuss that because they objected to the bond, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they did object to the bond.
They did in our discussion.
And they wanted an assurance, they
Sure.
just want to do an assurance test of their financials.
Correct. But one of the actions that the city commission could do, and again, I just want to make sure that I underline that, staff's position on this is that we go with the bond. We do feel that our position would be strong in going back to MRP to inform them that the city commission would approve an agreement with them, however, that it would have to be in the form of the bond versus the assurance test.
I'd go with staff recommendation.
Okay, to ask for our attorney to go back and say that we would prefer the bond.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you second that, Commissioner Bush?
Would our attorney want to respond, or?
I am happy to go back to them and tell them it's a bond. I can tell you, practically speaking, that bond is not going to be 40-year bond, right? Because no bond company is going to issue a 40-year bond. So now we're talking about a series of bonds over time, which, again, I'm happy to go back to them and tell them that that is a condition. That is certainly your prerogatives to do. It's just going to be then some monitoring from the city moving forward to make sure that that bond is always in effect, because it's probably anywhere from 2 to 5 years at the longest that a bond will issue. So every 2 to 5 years, we're going to have to make sure that they have
It's
updated
renewed.
that bond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask whether the bond is renewed. Can be, bonds are renewable, aren't they?
Sure.
So in that case, then, if we say 40-year bond, depending on the number of years, 3, 4, 5 years renewable, which gives us some certainty. Is
Well,
that
it's sort of a
problem?
trade-off, right?
Yeah.
So on one hand, they would like these restrictive covenants to do their closeout. And they've agreed to pay up to $900,000 in this differential in cost with the rate of inflation. If they now have to bond, that bond comes at a cost as well. So they may very well, and we've had these discussions over this because they say, well, that's a cost, we're gonna take that off of the 900. So they may come back and say, yeah, we'll do a bond for 40 years, but now the number is not 900, it's 600, because that bond over 40 years is gonna cost us 300. You don't have to grant them the restrictive covenants. They probably need them for their closeout, although there may be a way for them to work around that with Eagle as well. So, it's a give and take. And like I said, I'm happy to go back to them and say, no, it's a bond, that's a condition. And we can see what they say from there.
What is our time frame for making this decision?
There really isn't one. Other than what their time frame might be, but that doesn't necessarily concern us.
Can we come back to this in 2 weeks
Oh, sure.
after you've talked to them?
Sure, absolutely.
Is that okay with manager?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So
I would be
Commissioner
much more comfortable doing that.
So you're going to propose
Yep,
staff recommend, okay, perfect.
yep.
Okay,
And
so
then,
we still need a motion and a second to vote, to send you back to them, right?
I move then
yeah,
to send our counselor back to them, indicating that we would prefer a bond. And then to come back with a new language or proposal in 2 weeks.
Second.
Okay. Any other words, Mike?
No, I will come back and let you know what they said. I know, it took some effort to get them to 40 years, so I don't know what they'll say, but if that's a condition, that's a condition.
And we're more than willing to negotiate, but we definitely have to know where they are going to draw the line. Obviously, too.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, I'm fine going back to that.
And the implications for us are serious, right?
Could be, yeah. No, and nobody knows. That's part of the problem.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it's by the river.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. We have a motion and support. All those in favor to send our attorney back to MRP Properties Company, requesting a 40-year bond. A support by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries. We are at item 19 in the new business, which is about considering a contract amendment to the Water Resource Recovery Facility Rehabilitation Contract with Fishbeck Engineering. Manager DeSense, please give the commission an overview.
So staff is recommending a contract amendment with our engineers at Fishbeck. Fishbeck is and continues to be the engineers overseeing the Water Resource Recovery Facility Upgrade Project. The amendment is for a number of changes to the project, which includes increased engineering needs related to the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that we have entered into that program, removal and replacement of the grit system to a newly constructed building, additional HVAC, digester work, and construction engineering. Overall, the amendment, which is for $430,000, is low compared to the principal forgiveness offered by the CWSRF program, which we've engaged in. Even estimated on the low end for phase 2, that's going to be $1.8 million of principal forgiveness in that program. So we feel it's a good offset to that. Also, I want to point out that the increase from the current contractor, which is $1.04 million, now with the $430,000 increase would bring the contract to $1.5 million total, or 5% of the estimated contract price, which is below the industry average of 15%.
Does the commission have any questions? If there are no questions, is there a motion to approve the amendment to the WRRF rehabilitation contract with Fishbeck?
Am I moving again?
I would recommend we move to accept the contract amendment with WRRF.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Okay, motion carries. We are on to item 20 of new business, which is actually a presentation from our city attorney, Mike Holmreier, on the charter amendment related to city commission terms. We probably should have just told you, just sit back up here, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of a presentation it is, but I can give you an update. As you might know or remember, the city started down a path to amend the city charter, and that was to switch your elections from odd to even numbered years. And so we have to amend the charter to do so, and we've had some back and forth with the Attorney General's office. So I'm happy to report that the Attorney General's office has preliminarily approved the proposed charter amendment. That charter amendment would move your elections to even numbered years and then have in those groups 3 and 4 of the city council members staggered in those elections, so that it would combine groups of commissioners the way they are not right now for purposes of the next election. The net effect of that is this happens over a series of years to then align those dates. But we can put this on the November general election. And so in 2 weeks, I'll have a resolution and an approving ballot language consistent with the Attorney General's preliminary approval. Any questions?
Okay, so I have a question, just sort of clarity, really. So if this happens, then when do we implement this process? Is it with the next election or 2 years from now?
So it would start actually with the election for it would start with the change in offices that expire on December 31st of 2023. So there would be an election in November 2023 for a 3-year term, which expires in 2026. For 3 of the offices that expire on December 31st, 2024, there would be an election in November of 2024 for a 4-year term, each of which would expire December 31, 2028. And then for 2 of the offices that expire on December 31st, 2022, there would be an election in this November, for a 3-year term, but those terms would be extended by 1 year each and expire December 31, 2026, to align then those with future even-numbered elections moving forward.
Okay.
Okay, so the election this November, because we'd be voting on this charter amendment, so we wouldn't know whether or not it would pass, that would just be a 3-year term.
Yes, unless the charter amendment, I think, passes, in which
Okay.
case then it would extend
It would
those.
extend it a year.
Yep, so that we can then start to align them.
Okay, so if the charter amendment is brought to election in November, if it passes, then those commissioners that are voted in will extend a year.
Yeah,
Yes,
so the
okay.
purpose of the amendment would be to amend Article 2, Section 4, to increase the term for each city commission office from 3 years to 4 years, change the staggering of office terms, so there are 2 groups, one of 3 and one of 4, who are elected in even years. And if approved, the amendment would lengthen the term of office for each commission member and require elections only in even years.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan is the one that spearheaded this. He just felt that it was unnecessary for us to have elections every year. I agree, because it definitely, it made it so that the city would have to spend money on years when there were no other items on the ballot. And we are one of very few municipalities that still have 3-year terms in Michigan. So I think that I'm very supportive of this change. I think that this is something that we should move forward in, put it on the ballot, and let the residents of Mount Pleasant decide if they'd prefer to come every even year and vote for commissioners, or if they still want to do it every year.
Yeah, right now, there's Article 2, Section 4 has 7 commissioners elected in 3 groups.
Yeah.
1 group of 3, 2 groups of 2, and the term commences in January following the election for the last 3 years, except as in Article 15, Section 5. So we'd be revising that language then to switch to even, and then consolidate those groups into 2 groups.
Yes.
1 of 4, 1 of 3.
Yeah. Do we need a vote on this today? Or
No,
do we just move it
We'll
forward?
be back in 2 weeks with a resolution and ballot proposal. If you have until August 16th, I believe, to get this done, so we've got plenty of time for the November general.
Okay. Cool. Are there any other comments or questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Thank you.
At this time, I will open the floor to commissioners and staff to make any announcements on city-related issues or new business. Commissioner Ake.
It's really not an announcement so much as an indication of, it's a commendation. Is that okay? We just had 2 proclamations, which for me are really significant. So I want to commend the city of Mount Pleasant for those two proclamations. And the reason is because they deal with two groups that are often, that have generally been marginalized. And, you know, those two proclamations also deal with civil and human rights issues. And if we are a city that has consistently said we are pro-human rights, pro-civil rights, we've passed a number of civil rights, proclamations, this for me is an indication of, the movement forward. I don't want to use the word progress, but it is progress. It helps us heal. It is important that we acknowledge that there are other stories and that the stories of other people, everyone's story is important. These are historical acts for me. So thank you, this city. I am really, really proud of you, and I'm glad to be a resident of this city right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have an announcement? Comment? I would like to remind our city residents that our precincts have changed and that will affect our August primary, will be the first election that is affected. You should have received a new voter card in the mail. I know I received mine, even though my precinct did not change, I still received one, so everyone make sure that they're looking for that and make sure that you know what precinct that you're going to be going to. All residents should be looking on the city website, which is www.mt-pleasant.org, to see what precinct they belong to. If you are unsure, you can always call the clerk's office here at City Hall and they will let you know based on your address. Also, make sure that you are registered, and if you do not register in time, we still have election day registration, but you must bring in something valid that will show that you live in the city. It could be your driver's license, and I think you also, utilities, billing and things like that you can bring in. But it's very important that we demonstrate our rights by using our vote. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay. We're going to now open the floor for public comment on the agenda and non-agenda items. Have we received any emails on public comment?
No, we have not.
All right, if you wish to comment, please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and before you make your comment. If you're joining the meeting by Zoom, you may use the raised hand feature or *9 if you're joining Zoom by phone. Once you are recognized, you'll be moved into the meeting and so you can be heard and make your comment. Please state your name and address before your comment.
Am I good to go?
Yes, you are.
Okay. My name is Erin Zimmer. I live at 517 East Grand Avenue in Mount Pleasant. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak and introduce myself as a candidate for state representative of the 92nd District. I am a lifelong resident of Isabella County. I grew up in the Rosebush area, and my husband and I are raising our 2 kids in Mount Pleasant, although my son is just about to leave for Ann Arbor in the fall. I have an undergraduate degree in political science and a graduate degree in marriage and family therapy. And surprisingly, it was my graduate degree in marriage and family therapy that led me to run for office. Over the past couple of years, I've heard some really devastating stories of people who've been affected by COVID and the shutdowns and just the isolation that occurred. And while I really enjoy working with people 20 to 30 times or people a week, I wanted to do it on a bigger scale. And so with that, and with a degree in political science and some background working for the state of Michigan, and I'm also a member of the Board of Review for the city of Mount Pleasant, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And so I will be on your ballot. Make sure you go out and vote in August, and you will see my name there for state representative.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that would like to come forward and say something? Is there anyone on Zoom?
Yes, I'm going to bring in Bill Mordeza.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just wanted to take this opportunity to indicate that this commission meeting is the last meeting while Jacob Kane is still an employee of the city of Mount Pleasant. Jacob, as you know, is our city planner and assistant director of community services. And so I, again, wanted to congratulate Jacob for his new role, which he'll be starting after this week over in the city of Midland. And we'll indicate that we are going to miss him greatly. It's been my honor and my privilege to work with Jacob over the last 7 years and recognize the tremendous impact in a positive way that he's had over the city of Mount Pleasant. So again, just publicly acknowledge that our city planner and assistant division director will be leaving us at the end of this week, and wish him well in his future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, I will echo those remarks. Definitely Jacob is going to be missed, but I look forward to hearing about his new adventure as he moves to help out Midland with their, I don't know how many problems Midland has. I don't think they have as many as ours, but I'm sure he's going to go out and do some great things there. Is there something you'd like to say, Director Loria?
We are the best city.
Okay, I agree. We are the best city in Central Michigan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, we appreciate that. Are there any other comments? Anyone else on Zoom?
No other raised hands.
Okay, at this moment, I'm going to close public comment, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second.
All right, we have a move by Commissioner Eke to adjourn and a second by Commissioner Bush. All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no.
Oh, dear.
Nope, we are out at 8:07. We are adjourned.
All right.